Thanks for staying with us. So your view will be 7 years old on Friday.
Yay. Can't wait.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. As part of our 7th year anniversary celebration, we're going to be having quite a number of executive governors of various states. But first, today, we have with us the executive governor of Delta State, Senator Ifeanyi Arthur Okowa. Good morning, sir. Yay.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show, sir.
Thank you for having me on your show.
First, I'd like to congratulate you on the launch of Operation Delta Hawk. Tell us about that. Is it just for Delta State or for the entire South-South? Because I know you're also the chairman of the South-South Governors Forum. Tell us about that.
Operation Delta Hawk is actually for Delta State. It is a joint outfit of the various agencies, security agencies, and we put it up because we want to have a more proactive approach in terms of operations, where we can get all the security agencies on board, where they can share intelligence and share operations. And we believe that that will help us because in recent times we've seen an increase in the crime rate, particularly in terms of kidnapping and coercion. It's eating deep into our youths, and unfortunately also we've been having a lot of clashes between our the headsmen and our farmers. And we think that we need to be able to nip this thing in the bud before it escalates beyond where it is at the moment.
All right, so we'll come back to that, but I want to also just start from the beginning. This is your 5th year in office, and you used to be a senator, now a governor. How was that transition? Tell us when you started.
For me, truly, it was not a real transition anymore. But for me, my experience, the 4-year experience in the National Assembly did prepare me much better to take over the realms of office. But it was a very difficult time. You recall that in 2015, it was very difficult for all states because of we went into a recession. By 2016, the oil prices had gone down, and everything appeared to be really difficult. And most of the states were burdened not only with high salaries, but with high debt overhang. And that was also the situation in Delta State. It was quite tough in the first 2 years. But in the last 2 years of our first tenure, the oil prices picked up, and that improved our resources as a state. A lot has been done. A lot has been done in Delta State in the last 5 years. Our people are happy. And only recently, even you can see that Delta State was rated very high when it comes to the issue of reduction of poverty, because we've done a lot in terms of trying to create jobs for our people, trying to get our people engaged. We've done a lot in keeping the oil facilities working as it ought to be, and that has tended to improve the local economy also. But very importantly, we've done quite a lot in terms of road infrastructure, health infrastructure, school infrastructure. A lot has been done. And we pay special attention to technical education, which is very good for us.
Okay, Mr. Governor, you know, we're in unprecedented times, as they say, the pandemic we're living through, and we hear different states and how they're handling it. And I would like to know how you've been handling it, especially as it affects the local economy. You've just spoken of how you've done so much in that regard, but we know the pandemic came in and has, affected a lot of things. So how have you handled it, especially economic-wise?
Okay, first was to ensure that we have put the health facilities in place. We have 4 centers for case management. We have some other isolation centers and holding centers. And then we had to educate our people, which was very key to us. Thereafter, we had to ensure that we had prepared all this and that we had started engaging the people. We went into the lockdown phase, which was almost nationwide. On the 1st of April, we went into a lockdown. But after the first 1 month, we went into a second phase of lockdown for 2 weeks, after which we had released our people to go back to their businesses. Schools are still closed. Worship centers are not fully closed, but we have ensured that only very few persons attend worship centers. The people have gone back to their businesses. The one good thing we did was to ensure that in the first 1 month, even when we were on lockdown, the farmers were allowed to go to their farms, and those who had livestock farms were also allowed to go to their farms, which is very critical because we didn't want to destroy the output from those areas. Right. But now we've allowed essentially most businesses to return, but with social distancing and the use of face masks. Right. And we had to also produce 1 million face masks by the state and urge people as much as possible to use their face masks in their business centers.
Fantastic.
So things are actually work well. There's no real disruption as we have at the moment, but currently we have an interstate law reduced prices of oil, which is going to affect us to some extent.
Right. Okay. Go ahead, Emma.
So I must commend you for what you've been doing. Last time we spoke, your Commissioner for Information informed us about your own test laboratory now in Delta State, as opposed to the taking samples to Irua for testing. How has that improved the situation of of COVID or the coronavirus in Delta State? Has the numbers increased? Has it reduced?
It's truly impact. Yeah. No, the numbers cannot actually reduce. By the time you have a laboratory close to you, it means that you're able to quickly test the people. Yes. Thank God, since they came in, we've been able to have a faster receipt of results of tests. We didn't need to travel anymore. We didn't need to have a waiting time. And apparently, the first week they came in, our numbers rose. And it was obviously expected that the numbers would rise because we had many more samples to be tested. We've been doing very well in terms of contact tracing for the cases that we have. And as quickly as we have cases and the contacts and they have spent the number of days they ought to spend in isolation, they are quickly tested, and it's improved a lot on our management of the COVID. And we're truly very grateful. As of today, we have 39 confirmed cases. We continue to manage it and to ensure that every contact is properly traced and isolated and eventually tested.
Right. So oil is at an all-time low right now internationally, and that has affected federal allocation to the states. So obviously states have to begin to look internally to see how they can develop and increase the IGR. Going by the fact that the reduction in federal allocation has been reduced, what have you done so far to boost the internal generation within your state, and how you plan to revive your economy?
In the risk, we have to be careful how we go about collection of internally generated revenue, because the oil economy impacts a lot on the Nigerian community. The oil economy is down, so government expenditure is down. And beyond that, because of the COVID, a lot of businesses are actually struggling. So we need to be careful that we don't overtax them. Otherwise, we'll bleed those companies. It's very important that we look at this generally as a nation, because most of the informal sector, most of them are actually going out of business because of the effect of the COVID. Even when you have opened up, some of them are very careful. They don't want to come out. There are so many things that is going on. People are trying to learn to stay at home. You're wearing face masks now, so a lot of people are not going into so many places they would ordinarily wish to go to. The buying power of the people have reduced. So we need to be careful what we do concerning internally generated revenue. But what is happening is that, yes, we are one of the states that normally generate fairly some reasonable fund from IGR. We'll continue to ensure that those companies that are up and doing pay their taxes, and that we continue to encourage people. But what we want to actually do more is trying to support the weak, and then when their businesses continue to thrive, then they can now be in a position to begin to pay taxes. So we're trying to look at all forms of ways to actually support the micro and small scale businesses. And even during this period of COVID, the 1 million face masks was produced by our fashion designers and tailors in various places. Those that were actually trained by the state and have been established by the state. 300 of them were engaged, and they did a good work. And I believe, too, that they were able to make some money for themselves and for their families.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to try to weigh the balance between trying to tax people the more, which is not the best at the moment.
Right.
The best thing is actually to try to improve their businesses and their earning powers at the moment.
Okay. Mariam had a question earlier.
Yes, sir. I asked earlier if you have any regrets in the 5 years that you're looking back. There are things you may have promised the people, and for many reasons they have not come to fruition, come to pass. What would you say those things are, and why? And then just one more thing. We have someone on Twitter also asked. He says, please, when will you complete the Ugewe Bridge in Ugeli South local government? We still use canoe to get to our village.
I hope you pronounce that well. But in the first instance, I think we've been on course. We've been on course with our programs. I would not say at the moment that there are things that I did promise that we have not started, but it's possible that if we had more funding, we would have been able to upscale. We're doing quite a lot in terms of road construction, the technical colleges. Yes, we want to have at least 25 technical colleges, one in every local government. But at the moment, we're just working hard to ensure that we're able to provide 15 by the end of 2021, hoping that we're able to do the rest before the end of the tenure. Because we understand that technical education is the way to go to feed our polytechnics and ensure that children come out of school properly skilled and prepared for the future. Right. Yes, also our health insurance plan, through our health insurance policy, we also intend to scale it, but because of limited resources at the moment, we have just about 700,000 persons enrolled in the health plan. We're doing the best. We're the best so far in the country in terms of the health insurance plan, but I think that we can upscale them more. Our idea was that before we leave in 2023, we should be able to have a 50% coverage for our people in Delta State, which would mean that we need to cover about 3 million people. So there's quite some work to be done. But in terms of infrastructure, we're doing quite a lot. A lot is still there to be done, but we're staying focused on it and ensuring that we continue to do what we ought to do. In terms of the bridges, as at today, 3 of our bridges are under construction strong. The bridge across the Ase River in Kwale, between Kwale and Tokwa East, the Ayakromo Bridge, and then the Owo Bridge is almost completed now. So we're taking things by the strides because of the funding level. We don't want to keep contractors owed and create difficulty for them. But our contractors on site, and they are working they are doing quite a lot. Okay. We're also constructing a bridge across Orere, that's from Agbaru to Orere, and that bridge is going on quite well. Yeah.
Okay.
So, sir, we know, I must comment Delta again. I saw a video. I'm happy with that state where fruit market was commissioned, and they had proper hand washing centers and all that within the market, and all the store owners were given their spaces for free. I'd like to know how you plan to replicate this across the state, because we know economy is very important. If essential foods you are encouraged to go back to business, that would create employment for people. Do you plan to replicate such fruits market and hand washing centers across Delta State in response to COVID again?
Yeah, we intend to. In the first instance, this has worked, and I must actually pay a lot of tribute to the Director General of the Capital Territory Development Agency, who was very proactive in her action. Half of those fruit centers commissioned were actually donated by well-meaning Deltans and non-Deltans living in Delta State. A few were constructed by the government. So we intend to scale it, having seen that it is working very, very well, and it's a very decent environment to buy fruits and other food stuff, and it's actually very enterprising. And we are Environment Development Agency to also introduce such within the Warri and Uwe and environs, which is a very commercial center in our state. So we're looking into that and gradually see how we're able to upscale it across the state.
All right, let me ask about militancy. Since you became governor, it has reduced drastically. We've hardly heard in the news about the pipeline bust or militancy in the Niger Delta. What exactly have you done to keep it at that minimal level?
We have actually been in good communication with our people. We engage all stakeholders and ensure that they came to understand the need for us to give peace a chance. And a lot of our youth have been engaged in both in intelligence work and also they've been engaged in other aspects of governance. And a lot of them are also being trained. And they are beginning to see a lot of things go in the proper direction, so they are happy about it. Secondly, we have also done a lot of construction of infrastructure in the various riverine areas, which has enabled them to buy into the program of peace that we have. A lot of roads have been constructed in various riverine areas in Okorenko, Kopuraza, in Ogulaha. These are oil-producing communities in places like Burutu, Gidigbe. We are doing road construction. These are things they never saw before. So they saw development brought to their doorsteps, and they didn't need to continue to go in to talk to people. The deputy governor led a stakeholders committee to engage the people. We have what you call the advisory committee that also of the state of very prominent leaders in the place who are opinion leaders, engaging the people. We have engaged the traditional rulers. We have engaged various youth formations, and it's helping us quite a lot. Okay. Very importantly is that the people have begun to see that it is possible to bring development to their area. Okay. And when you start to see this, then there'll be no need to continue to destroy, because the whole thing was going on before, because the people felt neglected, even when they were producing the oil. But there is no neglect at the moment. They are seeing a lot of infrastructure.
All right, go ahead,
okay. Mr. Governor, women issues is very important to us here, and I would like to know what specific contribution your government has done towards poverty alleviation when it comes to women, appointments, things like that in the state.
Well, a lot is being done for the women. In the first instance, our job creation program, which is from the Job Creation Office, we've ensured that in everything we do, there is a minimum of at least a minimum of 40% of women engaged in the job creation program. We've trained several thousands of youths. Of course, most of these fashion designers I was talking about, over 300 of them that were engaged in the production of the 1 million face masks, cloth face masks, were actually women. Then from the Ministry of Women Affairs, a lot is being done to empower women, and we have also started programs, even as we begin to reduce our budget, because we have had to reduce our budget for 2020. Rather than reduce that of the Women Affairs, we're actually upscaling it, because we understand that this is the time to truly empower women to put food on their table. And realizing that the girl child is truly being neglected, we have also created an office for girl child entrepreneurship development and empowerment, and we're very happy about that, because our people are enthusiastic about that. We want to be sure that our girls and our women are properly engaged, because when they are truly engaged, you find that you can actually keep the family fed, because women know how to manage funds much better than men. There's no doubt about that. So we're doing quite a lot in our program, even through the Ministry of Youth Development. We've just approved funds and released funds to engage youth throughout the 270 wards. And of course, I've insisted that at least out of the 3 we are choosing in the first instance from every ward, at least one person must also be a female. So we're doing quite a lot, apart from several other things we're doing through our microcredit development agency, where a lot of women are truly being impacted.
All right. Let me go on a quick break, sir. When we come back, we'll conclude this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. We still have our guest on the phone. Nima had a question. Go ahead, Nima.
So, sir, the states in the Niger Delta have, of course, suffered environmental degradation due to the activities of oil companies in that state. How did you prepare or deal with the effects of that under COVID? And how are you helping out? Because, most of the people can't go to their farms, they can't fish, their waters are contaminated. What are you doing to help people? Are there palliatives? What did you do to assist people? Sir?
Did you get that?
Yeah, I lost you temporarily. Can you repeat the question, please?
So I was talking generally, all states in the Niger Delta have suffered environmental degradation and their livelihoods, which is largely farming and fishing, have been affected. How did you prepare for this within COVID? How have you assisted the people with palliatives, because they can't fish regular, like the good fish or farm products like they could before the activities of the oil workers?
Okay. They actually, in the first instance, it's unfortunate that the exploration of oil has actually impacted very negatively on our people. A lot of them who are into fish farming have lost their businesses. Even those who are into agricultural production have lost their farmlands. It's very, very unfortunate. But however, we continue to encourage our people. COVID has come in to create some further challenge, but it has not stopped our people from farming. So we're already preparing ourselves again through the Ministry of Agriculture to assist people. We have continued to ensure, because most of our youth are no longer going to go into fishing because we don't have fishes in our rivers. So what we actually do is to train them in aquaculture and truly eventually establish them. Some are established within the areas where it's still possible to have fish ponds. We establish them there. Where we're not able to have fish ponds directly, we're able to use the other mechanical types of fish pond, like using the tarpaulin tanks for them.
Right.
And a lot of them, we've actually created a lot of clusters and imparted on them. Some we have trained in the area of poultry, and we are assisting the youth. The farmers generally, we are assisting through our various programs in the Ministry of Agriculture.
Right.
And we are already released once again, even in this COVID period, we've received release funds for them to help the cassava, because we are actually very rich in cassava production and in oil palm production. So we've actually released some reasonable quantity of money for the purpose of ensuring that we have improved planting materials for our farmers who are into cassava production.
Right.
While we've also released money for sprouted nuts for the oil palm production. These are things we do on a yearly basis.
All right.
And we are already working very hard with the central bank to key into the cassava enhancement program.
As we wrap up with you, sir, let me just ask you your views on two topical issues. First is, many have said that this pandemic has caused an opportunity for restructuring. Do you agree with those clamoring for restructuring at this time? And secondly, recently the president also gave an executive order for independence of the state legislature and judiciary. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's not time for that?
In the first case, the issue of COVID has nothing to do with restructuring, but I believe in restructuring of our nation. I believe that it is in the best interest of Nigeria for us to truly restructure, because in a restructured country, you find that there is more healthy competition, and the states, the federating units are very likely to come up stronger at the end of the day. It's important that we rework it in such a manner that it is a win-win situation, but we cannot pay lip service to it. There is a need to restructure. But COVID does not directly affect restructuring. But however, I think that it's still in the front burner, and we must not pay lip service to it. We must look into it for the unity of this country, for increased competitiveness among the federating units of the state. We actually need to look into the area of restructuring. It is very, very important. Concerning the executive order, Mr. President, would realize that in the last constitutional review, actually the constitution, the new constitution has actually provided for the autonomy of the legislature and the judiciary. And the process is, many states are trying to understudy the process and to see how they can go about it. And what is really happening is that the states are not, they are ready to actually go through it, but they want to understand the working relationship so it does not create tension within the various states. Right. Recently, just last week, a select committee of the Governors Forum had a virtual meeting with some select speakers of various sizes of assemblies, and we discussed this in full, how we should be able to implement it. Yes, the executive order has come, but the real thing is that in the various states, there must be a legislation. It is that legislation that will outline what is required for this autonomy to be the way it ought to be. Right. And I want to believe that many states are not averse to that. But in Delta State, for more than a year now, we already have passed our legislation granting autonomy to the legislature, and only recently we had also passed legislation granting autonomy to judiciary. Wow. So we've gone ahead of time. The legislature for more than a year now has been autonomous, and they have been doing their things on their own, and it's working perfectly for us as a state.
Good, good, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Your final message to Muslims this season?
Yeah, I want to congratulate my Muslim brothers and sisters and to wish them happy celebration. It's a wonderful time. They've had their prayers for our nation and for ourselves, and I believe that it is time for all of us to continue to pray for our nation. I wish them the best at this moment.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. We appreciate your being here.
Thank you so much.
You've been speaking with the Executive Governor of Delta State, Senator Ifeanyi Arthur Okowa. As we said, this whole week is our anniversary. We're 7 years on Friday, so we'll be speaking to a few governors just as they're celebrating their own. Some of them are celebrating 1 year in office. Others are here 5 years, their second term. We'd like to hear what they're doing in their states and get you to call in to ask questions. So unfortunately, we couldn't get as many tweets. We're having some technical issues. But unfortunately, we've already lost connection with the governor. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fantastic show so far. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a fabulous day. Bye for now.